got a completely different. So I mean, I know you're a fan, so let's start with that. So
Absolutely,
you're a fan.
That's why I'm here.
But there is also the professional head that you have had as I mean, you've been a commercial manager very recently. It's not as if I know you were at City till the beginning of the millennium, but you've still been working at Warrington and Lancashire County Cricket Club as a commercial manager. So this empty seat thing and the expansion of the brand is something you're very well aware of, isn't it?
I think there's first of all, there's a great point at the end about what the players and the manager will think about, and there's actually two aspects to that. One is if we, whether we fill the ground, like at West Ham, but the thing that gets me, and it's my pals know is a bit of a bugbear, is the leaving before the end. And I think, whilst it happens at a lot of clubs, I think we've got an issue with that. I think that, there's a very good reason why we don't sell all our seats, all our tickets for various reasons. One of them is financial pressure on pockets that have been pressurised with huge number of games we never used to have. So I absolutely get that. But once you're paid and you're in the stadium, you stay there and you support. Now, there might be the odd one who needs to get back to a sick relative or whatever, but, near us we have, there's a couple, I don't mention them because I don't know the name, but 83 minutes every single game, off they go. For me, that's an issue because, you've now got, when the players finish, laugh on, and there's literally hardly anyone in the stadium. I believe that does actually become an issue for the players and the manager. Even if we can argue amongst ourselves, I think that's one thing. When it comes to the stadium, I think there's a lot of hypocrisy on this one in terms of the criticism we get. And by that, I mean there are two issues here. One is the size, the status, the fan base of the club. So if the criticism is you're a small club with no history, which is another issue which gets me very riled in terms of no history, I'm sure all of us, if we're not one of those big clubs with global support, well, if we accept that for a minute, then you cannot criticise for the empty seats because one goes with the other. If we don't accept that and say, no, actually we are one of the big clubs, well, then you've got to say, well, hang on a minute, then we should expect to fill the seats. How quickly you do that is another matter because the fan base, actually, if you go back to the real old days, I think you'll find there's one season in the 80s where we actually dipped below 20,000 as an average. It was just under, which was a bit frightening. So what is the core support? 20-something thousand. So to build that to 50,000 is a task, is a marketing task and takes some time. Whether the club was right to build the extra tier at that time instead of building up a waiting list of 10,000 season ticket holders. Again, there's probably a discussion about that. I think I probably know which route I'd have taken, but I think it's probably about the only criticism I would have of the club's strategy. I think they've been absolutely fantastic with what they've done generally, but it's this hypocrisy that's a problem. It can't be two things. Either we are a fantastic club which has achieved great things with a great team, let's be honest, it should be watched by more people, but it takes time to build that base up.
It's interesting, this discussion, and obviously knowing that you're a commercial manager and that's been your history in employment, and knowing that you've still got...
a commercial director at Lancashire County Cricket Club.
Sorry, I didn't mean...
about you being a banker in the old days or something.
As long as there's a B in that word. But in terms of you still have connections at the club, so I know it's a very difficult situation for you to answer, but for lots of reasons. But in terms of the way that the club is expanding, this might seem like a controversial question. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be just a legitimate question. Yeah. Are they trying to run before they walk in terms of looking for this global fan base, when actually week in, week out, 19 league games plus cup ties, you have to have mainly locally based supporters to go to a game like West Ham when you've only got 10 days notice when it's rearranged, and you're not going to fill that, and unless you're mega in terms of your worldwide brand.
Look, well, first of all, connections. I left 20 years ago, believe it or not. This
You've
year.
Still got friends there, though,
haven't you?
I've
got friends there, but I'm not connected in any way that would give me any sort of special information. I'm sorry to tell you, but I think the global expansion is absolutely right. I mean, the chief executive on several occasions has talked to fans about the fact that we are focused on global expansion, but also our local base, and they're very proud of that heritage. I mean, I think that they deserve massive credit for understanding and respecting the heritage of the club. The focus on for example, the '99 playoff final and so on. A lot of people who would have come in and taken a club might have actually said, well, let's forget about that. We don't want to focus on history. I think they've got the balance right with that. But the local thing, I mean, it is different to all the other situations. I think my point is that if you look at it purely from a marketing point of view, it's good practice to build up a waiting list. Now that means maybe some people can't actually watch every single game, but it does now help you when you're selling it. But I'm absolutely certain that there were bigger reasons for that expansion, part of the longer term project. And so I'm not got a massive problem with it, but I make the point that probably was done quite early. If you go forward 10 years, when we've won the Champions League a couple of times and a few other things, and that stadium isn't full with 56,000 people or more, then there's something wrong.
I have my own opinion that we have developed and we've moved away from the working class supporters, and we've seemed to have attracted more of like middle class families coming to the games as like a day out, and maybe they can afford to take the hit and not go to the midweek games. Yet I always think like, and then there's more people crying out for the cheaper tickets. So I kind it's kind of like a catch-22. I kind of feel like if you make the tickets cheaper, more people can afford not to go, if you get what I'm saying. And I know they brought in the at the start of the year the percentage. If you missed so many games, they'd revoke your ticket. But you know, on Wednesday there were so many people that didn't turn up, and I guarantee most of them were season ticket holders.
What Nathan's talked about, which is sort of overstretching people. Is that, I mean, as a commercial manager, you want to get the most you can. I understand that, but there is that line, isn't there?
It's very generalised, but their overall strategy has to be to build regular attendance of 50-odd thousand. We need to start looking at other reasons for coming, which is to watch a great football team. There's actually one or two individual players that are worth the gate money, aren't there? Let's be honest. You know, actually seeing your team win. The younger generation, sort of 3, 4, 5, 7-year-olds who want to see their team win and come out for all that excitement is very different to the motivation that sort of hardcore home and away. And you've got to be able to do both, I think, and actually look at the differences between them. So that's my point about the next 10 years, or however long it takes. If the club continues to do what it's doing, then we have to fill that stadium. We have to do it in different ways, but it shouldn't take away your right to feel the way you do, home and away. Different. If someone wants to come along and pay their money and just be entertained, and they have their role in a different way, we all live happily together in that way. Your point about the criticism, I absolutely get. What's got to me isn't we're an easy target. It's almost an indefinable sense of glee that the articles have. You know, even though they're supposed to be professional, independent journalists, there's a little bit of a sort of glee in having a go at us that they managed to convey, which I think is wrong. And I do wonder, I'm sorry if I'm changing the subject, Cheesy, you can never go at me later on, I'll never be invited back again, but when it comes to financial fair play and so on, you know, if City appeal and win the appeal, because that's quite possible, what will all of those journalists say? Will there be a humble pie? Or actually, we don't believe. In the same way we're saying we don't really trust UEFA and don't believe what they're saying, they'll just say, well, actually, we're not going to trust the independent view. Well, I tell you what, I think that's a harder position to take because it's a truly independent panel with none of the baggage that could be construed. And I think we've got to be careful about, you know, criticising UEFA and this person is, you know, may have conflict of interest. Just keep away from all of that and focus on supporting the club. And this is where I think as supporters we have to see there shouldn't be any negative vibes about, you know, we've seen these leaked emails, you know, and obviously, absolutely not. As supporters, that's where I think until the independent review happens, we should be holding the line and supporting the club, saying, look, we do have faith and we have trust in, just as we have faith and trust in Pep, we believe in the board. If it's proved differently, well then as fans we have a right to, that's the time to do it. Until then, let's let all the other people have a go at us, but stick with it, particularly on the basis that financial fair play, and this point has not really got through, is nothing to do whatsoever about stopping the investment that came in through Sheikh Mansour and creating a level playing field. I would encourage anyone just to spend 5 minutes, go on the UEFA website and read what financial fair play is all about. You will not see one comment about levelling the playing field. It's all about financial sustainability. And guess what? Manchester City Football Club are one of the most financially sustainable clubs in the world. And yet we're the ones facing a ban. That's the issue.
Now you brought this subject up. This is a question that I had to ask you tonight at some point, but it seems like now's the point. Obviously at Leicester yesterday, the Leicester fans were singing cheat, cheat, cheat and all the rest of it, and that's going to happen a lot more while this is ongoing. I'm not just talking about that chanting, but generally, as a commercial manager, Are you worried that whether this is ultimately found innocent or not, because of all the mud that's been thrown by the journalists you're talking about, by fans of other clubs, whoever it might be, that City now get labelled with this cheating sort of, brand? What I'm getting at is, has the brand been fatally damaged?
It wouldn't worry me at all in terms of fans, because that's what fans banter's all about. It's picking on the weakness of your opposition, having a go.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about hardcore fans, which is me and Emily and Nathan. He's only 19 still. 20, just turned 20, right? He's a hardcore fan, actually, right now. He goes home and away. He'll be in Madrid next week, won't you? Yeah. So these are hardcore fans. Yeah. Their opinions won't change. Our opinions in this room will not change.
It's exceptional at the minute because it's such hot news, and it will die down. It might die down completely if we're actually proved not to be cheats, but the chance will still be there. But you'll always, I say again, and some of the things that have been chanted over the years, are not acceptable at all. But there's usually that dark humour that comes from the opposition fans, and I think people in the stadium will sort of get that. The self-deprecating part will be we'll chant it ourselves a little bit, and that happens in other clubs, whether it's boring or whatever it might be. You take the mickey out of yourself. Where I'd be more worried commercially is when it comes to the absolute vital commercial revenue. If you look at the financial fair play issues, which is what we have to look at the minute in terms of revenues, will potential sponsors, brands being associated with a club that has apparently, allegedly been proved to be cheating, that's where I would be more concerned. Maybe it's because of my commercial background, but I think that there will be, even if people don't say it publicly, I think they will use that as an excuse to be cautious about being involved. That would be a worry.
So the stakes are very high on this, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. But unfortunately you can't sue people for reputational damage chanting in your stadium. You do very well to catch them all and actually do that, so it's actually something that you can't do much about, and overall, as I say, from a fan's point of view, I don't think it's just another part of the inevitable banter that will happen. There's always something that does, but commercially there are issues there, definitely.
And obviously Ferran Soriano gave a very eloquent speech, which was, I know, conducted by Chris Bailey at the club, but went on the website, and he was very defensive of everything and quite bullish, really, in his response. You think he's taken a bit of a risk by being so bullish at this stage?
No, because he might think I'm going to get sacked anyway, whether I've said that or not. I mean, but joking aside, I think he is confident. One of the reasons I would say that is because there was, a recent investment of a 10% equity from an American source.
Silver Lake,
thank you. The due diligence they will have gone through will have been immense, including all of this. So they would, that again would give some degree of confidence, I think. They know. The trouble is, we're all talking with so little knowledge. They have got the intricate details of all the cases. One thing I would say commercially, I suppose, and this is just using generics really, I don't have a particular worry about the inflation of the sponsorships. Certainly shirt sponsorship, if you look at the published figures, and admittedly, no one does publish them, so they're all slightly guesswork. I don't think that it's over the odds for what Etihad have paid, and I know a little bit about this through the naming rights deal at Emirates Old Trafford and the stuff I've done at Warrington. A company called Nielsen, who are probably one of the most reputable companies in the world, who have done a lot of work in the past, and other similar companies. They go through incredible, complicated formulas to work out what the value of the rights are. And my understanding would be that in terms of shirt, not really an issue. When it comes to the naming rights, which does look high, I sort of get that. But one of the things I would say, again, just based on experience, what actually is the right price for anything? If you ask me the deals that have been done, not just myself, but many of my colleagues over the last 30 years, sometimes you do a lot better than you present it professionally, of course you do, and there is a justification, but the reality is what someone will pay. So there are some deals you think, that's crazy, that's ridiculously cheap, and it's probably worth a lot more. Equally, there have been plenty of commercial deals done in the history of commercial sport, way over the odds. So it's actually very difficult scientifically to prove that we have inflated those figures. Also, if Etihad's account could actually be they obviously have audited accounts, but it's slightly different rules over there, so that they don't reveal all the figures. But when it comes to this sourcing of how much was paid potentially by a third party, well, Etihad's accounts have to show that as a cost. If it was subsidised by someone else, then it would be a lot less. So somewhere that figure has to exist. My gut feel tells me they've got a hugely high degree of confidence in what they're doing, and they will managed to defend their case and prove it's right. The trouble is there's so many other factors involved, and the thing that really gets you, I think, cynically, is you think that 2 years, as soon as I saw the 2 years, I'm thinking, I know exactly what's going on here. If they'd have gone 1 year, how do you reduce it down? 2 years is clearly excessive. It's absolutely clear what's happening there. I hope that somehow can come out in the
but
situation.
even if it's reduced to 1 on appeal, which is what you're suggesting could happen, that's City is still guilty.
Yeah, I think that would be a big blow, a big problem. I think we all maybe after all these years, I'm still allowed to be a bit naive and a bit hopeful. I everything I read and hear at our level points to some degree of confidence that this can be proven. As I say, until the final appeal has happened, whatever court it might be, I will support, as a fan, the club's view. And that's not being daft or silly or looking at this. If you actually look at it objectively, there's very, very good reason to see why that would be the case, particularly executives who have done an amazing job transforming that club. These are not people who are anything other than very clever, with great experience in terms of what they do. Why suddenly would they get this so far wrong? And if they have, then we'll have to suffer the consequences. If that's the case, we carry on supporting and do whatever's necessary.
Ask him, can you actually believe what's happened, Geoff, commercially at the club? It's incredible, isn't it? And say aye from me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Carl, I remember getting involved. There's a lot of fantastic sponsors that we had in those days when it was damn hard to get sponsorship off people, and a bit like, I guess, smaller clubs and other sports now. Maybe that's one of the things I took into Warrington, that sort of ethos that you had to have. The first year I was there, the turnover of the club was 1.9 million, and it's now, 600 million, something like that. And 75% was through the gate. So I think now it's about 10% or something like that. So it was a completely different era. And I have to accept, when we're talking about my time there, it is history now. It's a completely different time. But I think if you'd have said, particularly when we were 2-0 down to Gillingham, at that moment, do you think in whatever it was, 15, 16 years, you're going to be sitting there at a new stadium celebrating when you'd have got the, you're allowed to say men in white coats, I don't think you probably are anymore, but do you know what I mean? You'd have said, yeah, absolutely, off your trolley. You can't possibly think something like that. So no, I mean, no one could possibly envisage it. I thought I would never see my club win a trophy until the day I dropped dead. That was the thing. So that's why I if nothing else happened now, it'd be like nothing could take away those memories. And I know that's not what the club want to hear, because they need to go forward, and you have to be saying, what more can we achieve? But no, quite incredible, really.
Glenn Lockett, this is the final one I'll do on this. Ask Geoff, what was the drink Howard Kendall gave us in the dressing rooms before the game against Tom Garner Motors? Do you remember that?
Well,
this had better be, something we can put in a podcast. Your answer to this?
I don't remember. Well, it'll be alcoholic, because we played. The best day in the year when I worked there was the end of season game, Man City 11 against Tom Garner Motors, and so I played 14 games at Main Road and won 14. So I used to wind up Mike Summerby about that, saying, well, until you've got 100% success record, don't start having a go at me, because I didn't like being criticised. But it was, as a fan, the best moment at all. So the first year, Roy Clark came on for the last 20 minutes, and he was 64. Ken Barnes was playing. I can remember Glyn Pardo now getting rid of a dirty tackle from one of these mechanics from Tom Garner Motors, and the referee didn't do anything. Within 5 minutes, Glyn had absolutely taken him out, and it's like, this is what a professional does. So I think Glyn would have been, 40 odd then. Howard, he could sink a few, but that's I remember. I mean, incredibly privileged to have done 11 months there as working with him, and he involved everyone. He was one of the best motivators ever, and he had great ways with the players, quite often involving drink. I think there was a player who a fan had written twice saying that this particular player had been abusive and so on. So Howard got all lads together, and it got some champagne out. It was maybe 5 bottles, probably 100 quid in those days. They all thought, this is going well, and it was like, well, okay, I need to know who it is. No one said anything. Well, if you don't say now, then when I find out, you're going to have to buy the next round of champagne. And I think Mr. Hinchcliffe put his hand up and said, oh yeah, it was me, boss. and that was how Howard did things. But as a Mr. Ordinary, that's how us administrators see it. We are just ordinary people. We've been privileged to have been working alongside these legends, just to see little glimpses into how people like Howard motivated. He was incredible.
How did you get me involved in City at the beginning? You want to take all the credit for it?
Well, I don't know if it's credit. Some people might not thank me for it. I don't know. But no, it's because we were skint, couldn't afford anyone else. So we someone who was working in a bank who came in to see me, and as you said, there was no eating on. You just about got a cup of tea out of us because we couldn't afford the tea bags. And we had, videos was a new thing, and we needed a commentator on the club's video. So I gave you a shot, and the rest is history, isn't it, Cheesy? So
we've both lost all our hair since then, being City fans.
We never had any hair, I don't think, but no, it was.